Okay, hello everybody. Just wanted to take the day off of doing any kind of theological video and just share what I think is just a funny story from my youth. I've been thinking about this and laughing about it, and other people have been laughing about it since 4th of July, and since it's still the heart of summer, I figured it'd be a good time to tell a summer fun time story from the stupidity of my childhood. So, we had at our grade school this weird janitor. He spoke like 3 words of English, and not terribly hygienic, was usually seen wandering around in dirty wife beater t-shirts, and he had this black hair, and then but at the front of his hair was this thatch of white. So some idiot at the school decided, hey, let's nickname him Skunk. Now I gotta point out, Skunk was not like a strange person with a heart of gold underneath. I mean, Skunk was he was not to be messed with. He was a grouch. He was a grump. You kept your distance from Skunk. So, and I yucked it up with everybody else, and perhaps I with just a little too much fervor enjoyed the skunk jokes and everything else. Now, mind you, people were cracking the skunk jokes behind his back. You did not want to cross Skunk. So, one day in the early summer, we must have just gotten out of school. I was basically a good little dorky kid. I had a friend. He wasn't bad. A little more rambunctious than me, though, shall we say. So we're hanging out at my house. My mom's, I think, my mom taught at the local Catholic grade school where we went. So I think it was so early in the summer that she was still doing clerical stuff to wrap up. Yeah. So mom's wrapping up at school, and we think to ourselves, we gotta find Skunk's phone number so we can crank call him. So, Dan, my friend, did most of the legwork. We called information. Information was a little different back in 1988. We had to do a little more digging. But, no, he finds Skunk's phone number and calls the house. Now, Skunk's wife spoke about 5 words of English, and we didn't realize, Skunk's gonna still be up at school, taking care of janitorial stuff. It's the middle of the day on a weekday. So he calls the house, does Dan, my friend, gets Mrs. Skunk, and she like I said, she speaks 5 words of English, and she picks up, she's like, hello? Hello? Dan cracks up too much, hangs the phone up. It's too funny for Dan. He's like, no, I gotta do this again. So, I actually made up a rap about all the weird janitors at St. Bernard's. I know. I was a stupid kid. What can I tell you? But the line about Skunk in the rap, I'm not gonna give Skunk's actual name. It went, I'll just make a pseudo name for him. My name's Phil Hammerelli, and I'm a punk. And she's like, hello? And he's like, my name's Phil Hammerelli, and I'm a punk. The kids at school, they call me Skunk. And with that, Mrs. Skunk goes, ah! And he hangs the phone up. We're cracking up. But I felt bad that we did it. I had a very tender conscience. I knew, I just didn't feel right hiding that from my mom. Like I said, I was a little dork. So she comes home, And I could tell Dan felt a little guilty about it too, because when she came home, he's like, "Hey, we found John Panerella's number." Like, why would he tell her that if he didn't kind of want to fess up to his misdeed? And I was like, "Yeah, we called him." Well, my mom could be a pretty serious person, and if my kids someday tell me, "Hey, we crank called the weird janitor," I think I'm gonna be like, "Well, what are you crank calling Skunk for? What's the matter with you? Don't you realize he's nuts? No, get out of here." My mother, however, she's like, "Do you realize what trouble you could get into for doing this?" I mean, she's getting all apocalyptic on me about it. She was not amused. She was gonna tell my father, you know. So we go out. We have a above ground pool in the backyard. There's part 2 of the wacky day that was. We have an above ground pool, not like this one, and we're making a whirlpool. You know, we're just going around and around in circles in the pool to make a whirlpool. And my mother would always say, "Don't make a whirlpool. Could ruin the pool." We're like, how could it ruin the pool? Really? Stupid, disobedient kids. So we're continuing to make a whirlpool. And the water's in motion. And Dan, like, kicks against the water that's in motion. And he kicks a bunch of water against the side of the pool. And all the pool breaks. And all the water in the pool goes running down my driveway. My mother hears the commotion and comes charging out of the house. My mother, I think, swore 5 times in her life. That was one of them. She yelled the S word at the top of her lungs. And she just went back into the house. I mean, she didn't drink, but oh my gosh, she probably wanted a drink that night. I don't know how I wasn't grounded for like the entire summer after that episode. And I thought to myself, she's going to tell my dad about all this. Oh, and my dad was and is an easygoing guy, but man, I mean, he was the heavy artillery. I mean, you did not want Dad telling you, you know, what's the matter with you or whatever. Oh, it could be just frightful. And strangely, he didn't say anything to me about it. I honestly think he's, yeah, you know, here's what he probably said to my mom. He's probably like, "All right, he crank called the janitor. He felt bad about it. He told you about it. He won't be doing it again." And look, it was an old pool. I clearly remember we went to Dairy Queen that night, and summer went on like nothing else had happened. So here's a postscript to the skunk story. A couple months later, right when school got back in session, Skunk actually lived like 2 blocks up from Dan. We're walking around Dan's neighborhood, and he says to me, "Hey, Skunk moved." I'm like, "He moved?" He's like, "Yeah, he doesn't live at that house anymore." I'm like, skeptical. "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, the people there are cool. They're very nice. They've given me candy." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Let's go up and see them." So I half believed them and half didn't, and the half of me that didn't kind of won out, and I was waiting on the sidewalk. He goes up the steps. Goes up the steps of the house. It's about to knock on the door. And Skunk looks out the window at him and just gives him this look. And Dan, shall we say, gives him the stone cold salute. He tells him he's number 1 with the middle finger. And I'm cracking up. And we just run at top speed from his house, you know, from Skunk's house 2 blocks down to Dan's house and get in the door and laugh like the 2 misbehaving children idiots that we were. So, no point to that. I've just been, you know, something on the 4th of July made me remember that story. I've been telling it to people. They've been getting a pretty good laugh out of it. So, nothing big. Just hope you guys in YouTubeville get a good laugh about MSM 1876 when he was a stupid kid. That's all. It's just a summertime fun story. We'll talk to you.